What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 teams that could sneak their way into the college football playoffs this season. With the playoffs expanded to 12 teams, there is going to be a lot of chaos and there might be some surprise teams in there. So in this video, I'm not going to be talking about the teams that everybody is talking about to make the playoffs. I'm going to be talking about some sneaky contenders. And the first team I do want to talk about is SMU. Right now, they are 7-1 and undefeated in conference play. I know they struggled against Duke last week, but they still managed to win that game in overtime. It was a night game on the road, so it wasn't an easy matchup for them. SMU's offense has been rolling the last 5 weeks, but they had 6 turnovers in that game and nearly lost it in overtime. But when SMU plays clean football, that offense is very hard to stop. And if SMU can clean up turnovers, they have one of the most explosive offenses in the country. They are also very good at forcing turnovers themselves. They have 17 turnovers, which is near the top of the country. Right now, they are ranked in the top 20 and they've been on a winning streak. Ever since they started Kevin Jennings at quarterback, this offense has been rolling and Kevin Jennings is a great dual threat quarterback. If SMU can beat Pitt this weekend, they will likely finish 11-1 and undefeated in conference play because they don't have a tough schedule remaining. So I definitely think SMU is a team that could sneak their way into the ACC championship and possibly into the college football playoff. The next team I want to talk about that everybody has just completely forgotten about is Virginia Tech. Look, I know they have 3 losses and they would have to outright win the ACC if they want to make the college football playoff. But they have really been playing their best football lately. They have dominated the last couple of teams they've played. They nearly beat Miami on the road and they've won their last 3 games by double digits. Their only loss in the ACC is to Miami, and Miami might be the best ACC team. Maybe we see a rematch of Miami and Virginia Tech in the ACC championship. It's not out of the possibility. Virginia Tech has been playing like a complete football team on both sides of the ball, and they legitimately can win out. Virginia Tech gets Clemson at home. If Virginia Tech beats Clemson, that will automatically put Virginia Tech ahead of Clemson. Virginia Tech continues to get better, and that game is basically going to be their Super Bowl. Clemson hasn't played anybody in the ACC yet, and they are really going to get battle tested at the end of this season. We have to remember Virginia Tech went on a great run to end last season as well. And this season, they are starting to play really good football, and I expect them to be playing their best football by the end of this season. And maybe they sneak their way into the ACC title game. They nearly beat Miami at home earlier in the season. Maybe Virginia Tech wins a rematch against Miami. It's very unlikely for a 3-loss team to make the playoffs, but if any 3-loss team has a shot at making the playoffs, it is Virginia Tech. Because they could win out and only have 1 loss in the ACC, which gets them in the ACC title game, and they could totally win it. The next team I want to talk about is Pitt. Maybe they aren't really a sneaky contender because they are undefeated, but I really don't think people are talking about them enough as a serious playoff contender. So I decided to add Pitt on here even though they are undefeated. People have some questions with them because they won 3 one-possession games and the defense has been questionable. But if you watch that game against Syracuse, Pitt's defense looks much better coming off the bye week. They forced 5 turnovers against Syracuse and they absolutely dominated Syracuse. Pitt is still undefeated and the coaching staff is doing an excellent job with this Pitt team. And similar to Virginia Tech, Pitt gets Clemson at home, and a win in that game could shake up the ACC title picture. Eli Holston has really helped elevate that Pitt offense, and Pitt needs to be talked about more in the playoff conversation. Another team that is a really sneaky contender for the college football playoff is actually Colorado. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but people need to start taking this Colorado team seriously. Their only loss in the Big 12 is to Kansas State, and they didn't have their best player, Travis Hunter, or one of their best receivers, Jimmy Horn Jr., in that game. They also only lost that game to Kansas State by a field goal, and they easily could have won that game. And Colorado is a way different football team from where they were in week 1. I'd say they were a way different football team from where they were when they played Nebraska. They are only allowing 22 points a game, which is a massive improvement from 34 points per game allowed last year. Not only that, but something people will not talk about enough is that they have ran for over 100 yards in 3 of their last 4 games. And that is completely unheard of when talking about this Colorado team under Deion Sanders. Look, I wasn't expecting Colorado to take this big step forward this year, but I have to admit I was wrong. They are way better at the line of scrimmage, and that makes it a lot easier for a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. Colorado also has one of the deepest receiving cores in the nation. This is not a team that just has 3 or 4 good football players anymore. They are actually a good and legit football team now, and if they can continue to get better, I think they have the potential to beat any team in the Big 12. And there is still a wide open path to the Big 12 championship if they win out. That 3-game stretch to end the season against Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State won't be as hard as people expected it to be. Because obviously Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State are not as good as people expected them to be. Don't sleep on Colorado. I think they could win out and go 10-2. And if they just get a little bit of help, they will make the Big 12 championship game. And I have to give this Colorado team the respect they deserve because I think they've earned it. Like I said, I think this is a good football team and I think they have the potential to win the Big 12 as long as Travis Hunter stays healthy. The next team I want to talk about is Kansas State. People have kind of forgotten about this Kansas State team after they lost to BYU. They have won multiple one-possession games this year and they've been a little bit concerning, but they are still 7-1 and very much alive in the Big 12 title race. The only ranked team left on the schedule is Iowa State, and I see a path to 11-1 for them. And they will automatically make the Big 12 championship if they win out and beat Iowa State because that gives them the tiebreaker over Iowa State. Avery Johnson has become a great leader for this football team, and they are averaging over 200 yards rushing a game, which is near the top of the Big 12. I could definitely trust this Kansas State team with head coach Chris Kleiman. They've been consistent every year under him. Kansas State is always finding ways to win football games, so don't be surprised if they win out and make the college football playoff. Maybe they are not a sneaky contender to everybody, but I have to have them on here because a lot of people are not talking about Kansas State. The next 3 teams I'm going to talk about are 2-loss SEC teams. I will admit I think it's going to be difficult for a 2-loss team to get in the college football playoff out of the SEC because there are so many undefeated teams remaining from the ACC and from the Big 12. And you also got to keep in mind that Notre Dame only has 1 loss. So I'm going to talk about a couple of 2-loss SEC teams that could possibly sneak their way back into the college football playoff. And the first team I want to talk about is Ole Miss. And something that makes me confident with this Ole Miss team making the playoffs is if they beat Georgia, because that would give them a top 5 win over Georgia and they would be playing their best football at the end of the season. I know they had that bad loss to Kentucky and they lost to LSU. But personally, I don't believe Ole Miss has hit their ceiling yet this year. They've started slow in games, and the offense has not been efficient in the red zone at all. But if you pay attention to the defense, that defensive front is much better than last year. And I think they have the potential to be competitive with any team in the SEC, and they are a couple plays away from being 8-0. Ole Miss has to play their best game in the last decade if they want to beat Georgia, don't get me wrong. But Ole Miss has that game at home, and I don't see Ole Miss losing another game left on the schedule outside of Georgia. If Ole Miss plays a clean game against Georgia and battles up front, they have the potential to pull off a massive upset at home against Georgia and move to 10-2 on the season. The game against Georgia might be Ole Miss's Super Bowl, and Georgia hasn't looked super dominant this year like they usually do. So just maybe Ole Miss has a realistic chance in that game, and maybe they get a little bit of help and sneak their way into the CFP. I really think Ole Miss is a good football team, but they need to be more efficient in the red zone, and the offensive line needs to get better. But definitely keep an eye on Ole Miss. The next team I want to talk about is Alabama. Everything I said about Ole Miss can be said about Alabama. Alabama is a team that could come back from the dead, and they have that win over Georgia. Not only that, but they have the potential to get a road win over LSU. I think the SEC is going to get 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff. I do think the SEC could get 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff, and Alabama still has a path. So if Alabama could beat LSU and Oklahoma on the road, and if they can beat Auburn at home, they have a shot. And I really like what I saw from Alabama when they shut out Missouri last weekend, winning 34-0. The defense has definitely been getting better in previous weeks, and they get LSU coming off the bye. If Jalen Milroe can make more big plays and the defense does its job, then Alabama could beat LSU and win out. Don't count out DeBoer in Alabama yet because it is a new era of college football with the 12-team playoff. And there is still potential for Alabama to make a run late in the season. The last SEC team I want to talk about is LSU, and they would need a miracle to get in the playoffs. But if they get a little bit of chaos from other teams and there's some upsets, then LSU could sneak their way in there. Anything is possible, and a 2-loss SEC team should absolutely not be out of the conversation. LSU would need a lot of help because they have a couple bad losses, but they do have that win over Ole Miss, and if they beat Alabama, that would be another big win to their resume. The loser of the game between Alabama and LSU has no chance of making the playoffs. But they are both still alive for right now, and LSU is a team to keep an eye on. Like I said, LSU would need help, but there is still a path for them to make the college football playoff if they can win out. The next 2 teams I'm going to talk about are from the group of 5, and the next team I want to talk about is Tulane. Tulane actually might be the sneakiest group of 5 team right now, and they legitimately might be the best group of 5 team. They've quietly been dominating opponents, and their only losses are to Oklahoma and Kansas State, which are both 2 quality losses on the schedule. Tulane would also need help if they want to make the CFP, but their chances should definitely increase because they should go 11-2 and win the American Conference. I think there's a legitimate path for them to win out, and Boise State and Army would both have to lose a game or two, but there is still room for chaos and there's still games to be played, so don't count out Tulane. And we have to remember, if Tulane wins the American Championship, that automatically puts them ahead of Army and Navy. But Tulane has scored 40+ points in 4 of their last 5 games. They have solid defensive upside as well, and Tulane could quietly become the best team in the Group of 5. They would need Boise State to lose, but Tulane is a sneaky contender for the Group of 5 playoff spot. And the last team I want to talk about for this video is Memphis, because they are actually 7-1 and absolutely nobody is talking about them. Their only loss is to Navy, but if they win out and win the American Conference, that will redeem that loss to Navy. Memphis also has the potential to get a big win at Tulane to end the season, so that would be a good win on the resume. And if Memphis wins out and goes 12-1, they would certainly be in the case to be the G5 representative. I think Memphis legitimately might have the best Group of 5 quarterback, so they have a chance because anything is possible with the quarterback, so definitely keep an eye on this Memphis team. I still think Boise State is easily the frontrunner, but you have to remember the G5 team actually has to win their conference to be in the conversation. And if Boise State loses, the G5 playoff race becomes absolutely wide open for grabs. So that is why I am talking about Tulane and Memphis in this video. And those two teams are definitely teams to keep an eye on. But anyways, that is going to do it for this video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.